brand new website. We need all members, new and existing, to register on the new website. Please do this as soon as you can and have a look at all the new and improved capabilities of the website. It's very user-friendly, and I think you'll really enjoy it. The website is still rockunion.ie. I think you'll be impressed. As mentioned in the video a minute ago, we continue to support our three main charitable partners, the Vincent de Paul, the Mission Fund, and the Blue and White Support Group. Last July 4th, we held a virtual event called Rock Around the World, where we encouraged all our members around the globe to take part in some physical activity in their hometown and donate some money to the Blue and White Support Group. The Blue and White Support Group supports our fellow rockmen who may be in need of assistance, so I'm delighted that this was such a great success. Thank you all who participated. We had people take part from Dublin to Dubai, from Sydney to San Francisco, and from Valencia to Valdellobo. We'll do it again in July 2021, and we'll be in touch well before that event. Our thoughts and prayers go out to all our members and loved ones who have suffered losses in the last 12 months. Finally, if you think of any of your classmates could do with some support from the Blue and White Support Group, please don't hesitate to contact the union office in total confidence. We are all in this together, and as Father Cormac O'Bullicon always says, we need to reach out with care and kindness to each other, especially during this pandemic crisis. Now, moving on, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the Businessperson of the Year award winner for 2020. Mark Cummins is a Dublin native and was in the Blackrock College class of 2001. After Blackrock, Mark attended Oxford University, where he studied engineering and computer science. Needless to say, he graduated at the top of his year. He also holds a PhD in robotics and machine learning from Oxford. Until recently, he was the CEO and co-founder of Pointy, a startup that develops technology for local retailers. Pointy raised over 20 million of investment before being acquired by Google in January 2020. Pointy was Mark's second business, having previously co-founded Clink, a computer vision company also acquired by Google. Funny enough, in 2005, Mark applied for a job in Google, but never received a call back. And this prompted him to stay in college and work on a PhD. It was there that he met his future business partner for Pointy. I'm glad you never got that call back. After his initial venture, Clink was acquired by Google. He moved to work initially in their LA office and then spent some time in Sydney. He quit the Sydney office and returned home to think about startup ideas. He then set up Pointy with his friend from college, Charles Bibby, and I can't wait to hear from Mark on what has been an amazing story so far. Today, I am proud to announce and introduce the winner of the Blackrock College Union Businessperson of the Year, Mark Cummins. There you go, Mark.
Thank you, Stephen. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. A little virtual pass across. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you very much for the introduction. So in many ways, it's a big surprise to be here. If you told me when I was leaving school that I'd be coming back to collect a business award, or at the time I would have said that seems like maybe the least likely reason I could be coming back. I distinctly remember in school, I can't remember what year it was in, but some year we did some kind of personality survey in Willow Park, and one of the questions was, are you a leader or a follower? I very distinctly remember ticking follower. So life is full of surprises, but yeah, it's the union have asked me to say a few words about the business journey. So I'll keep it brief because I'm sure everyone would much rather hear from Padraig Harrington than myself. I think it'd be much more interesting. But just briefly, I left BlackRock in 2001. I really enjoyed my time at BlackRock and in Willow Park before us. I made many good friends in school, and I'm friends with many of them still to this day. I was pretty academically inclined in school, and leaving school, like many people, I didn't really have a clear idea what I wanted to do. My strongest suit was maths and science, although I kind of also liked English. But you know, I decided to pursue the kind of maths and science side, and so I went to Oxford and studied engineering and computer science, which definitely suited me well. But at the end of my degree, I still didn't really have a very clear idea of where I was going. As Stephen said, I applied for a job in Google, and I didn't even get a phone interview. They turned me down just out of hand, which in retrospect was probably a very lucky break. I applied for a job in a computer game company, which I didn't get as well. I did eventually get a job offer in a North London suburb writing operating systems for internet routers, which didn't sound like the most exciting thing in the world. So I turned that down, and I'm not, not quite sure what to do. I did a PhD in machine learning and robotics, which again turned out to be something that kind of suited me well. And I ended up spending 9 years in Oxford working on my PhD and my undergrad together. And you know, I'd never really considered starting a business. It wasn't something that I thought about much. But you know, only really when I was doing my PhD, I began to think a little bit about starting a company. And all these things start very small. So the company I started, the first company, Plink, which was related to my research. It was a computer vision and machine learning company. I started it in my bedroom. I was 24, I was still a PhD student. And like these things start off tiny. I was talking to another friend in the lab about maybe would you be interested in joining this company and doing it together. And he said like he might be interested, but he wasn't sure. And I remember there was an investor event coming up. I decided, you know, this company was still basically an idea. Let's apply to this investor event to present the company. And somewhat naughtily, I guess I wrote down my friend's name as the co-founder of the business, even before he kind of agreed. And I went to present at this company, and it got a good reception from investors. And from that kind of cemented it. And my friend, having seen that other people were interested, sort of came on board. And that became the start of that company. We were a tiny company. We were only 2 people. And we ran it first from a library and then from a room behind a pub. But it was a period of like very, very rapid learning and very intense. I mean, one of the crazy things is like you're a CEO of like a 2-person company. But then when you engage with other companies, they're like, oh, well, you should meet at a much more senior level than you would have any business meeting otherwise. And so we kind of, people started to get people's attention. The technology did quite well. And ultimately, we sold that business to Google in 2010, only after about 2 years, or even slightly less. I was about 26 at the time. So that was kind of very intense, but relatively short and simple business. And off the back of that, moved to California and worked at Google as an engineer, and sort of scaling up that technology, which I enjoyed. But I never really had a thought of starting a business again. I mean, the business had been very intense. And I kind of thought, well, I've done that now. I won't do that again. But after 3 years at Google, I was in a long distance relationship, and I was just getting a bit sick of being in a different city to my significant other. And so I decided to quit Google so we could be in the same place. And that worked out well. We ended up getting married. But as a result of that, I didn't have a job. And I had moved to Canberra in Australia to be together. So anyone who knows anything about Canberra will know it's not the most happening city in the world. I didn't have too many interesting job prospects. And so I kind of ended up deciding to start another company. So these things are all, a lot of serendipity. And, I was going to say maybe a little bit about the sort of, how that came about to start a second company. My interest in starting, the way I sort of think about business is always been kind of more an extension of my interest in science. So I always have enjoyed thinking and playing with ideas. I'm constantly kind of asking, why is some aspect of the world like this and not some other way? And when you ask those questions about all the things you encounter in your daily life all the time, sometimes you find that there's a very good reason for why something doesn't exist or why the world is the way it is. Maybe it's the economics or human reasons. There's a reason why everything is, something can't exist. But sometimes you ask those questions and there's no good reason for why the world is the way it is. It's that nobody's ever tried to make it any different. And those ideas are often very interesting businesses. So, for several years, I was kind of collecting ideas like that. And by the time I sort of came to Canberra, I probably had, a dozen or so kind of potential business ideas. And I spent a few months kicking the tires of them. And one of them ultimately became Pointy. And, the kind of core of the idea was, if you can search the whole internet in a tenth of a second, why is it that you still need to spend hours traipsing around town trying to find things in local shops? It's very easy to find something on an e-commerce website. It's very hard to find things locally because there's no way to search local retailers. And I was kind of thinking, well, if I could do that easily, then that might be an interesting business. And so that's what became Pointy. For quite a while, it was just me. Again, I actually started in a public library and then out of a porta cabin for a year. You know, that business began to grow, and actually several other people from BlackRock were involved. One good friend, a guy called Michael Gill, who I first met when I was probably 7 years old in Willow Park, he joined the company and ultimately became our COO. And it was kind of also serendipity for him. He had about 3 months out before he was due to start an MBA. And so for those 3 months, he started helping out and ends up never doing the MBA and kind of staying with Pointy. Our sales leader was a guy called Neil Redden, who was a few years behind me in BlackRock as well. So, you know, quite a few BlackRock people involved. And over 4 years, we grew to almost 100 people and raised about 20 million of investment. We had many, many hairy moments. We had, you know, a few days of cash in the bank many times. You know, not being able to make payroll was a serious prospect many times. But ultimately, the product, I think, was kind of resonated with people. And by the end of the business, we had a little over 1% of all US retailers were using the system. And we ultimately sold the business to Google in January of this year. You know, I think I don't want to go on too long. So just finally, in conclusion, I mean, I don't think I have any earth-shattering business advice. I mean, a lot of it is just common sense and hard work. But I mean, I think there's one thing I might say that's maybe not so obvious on the outside, and that's that technology businesses are really essentially all about the people. By far, the most important decisions you ever make are not which technology to use, but it's about who you hire and how you take care of them. Because it's good people and a strong team and a strong culture that ultimately just eats everything else for breakfast. I mean, everything else flows from that. And I really mean that as practical advice. I mean, it's not just a platitude or a piety. That is really the way that you win, is by taking care of your people. You give them space to try things and to fail and to try again and to make mistakes and learn from them. You know, they time out when they need it, when life is bumpy, because running a business is really intense, and taking care of the people is ultimately, you know, the only way that it works. And I can still remember Father Burlacone saying over and over again when I was at BlackRock, you know, be there for people. And, you know, it sounds a little corny, but I think that was the most important lesson we brought from BlackRock into the business. And it really was the lesson that mattered. So on that note, I just want to say thanks again to the union for the award, and hand you back to Frank.
Mark, thanks very much. Just before you go there, there's a question from the floor. We have a question wondering, what advice would you give to young men and women leaving school or now, both in terms of a career in IT? Is it the kind of coding courses that you think would be the better ones to do? Or if they wanted to have a career like you, how could they go about it?
Yeah, if you're interested in it, I would say that the best thing to acquire in college is certainly the harder skills, you know, the kind of technical skills around coding and so on, because you know, the softer skills you can pick up later, but you might learn to manage, or you might learn to do something on the job. You're very unlikely to learn to code on the job. And having a technical understanding of how things work is important to making good decisions and, you know, hiring the right people, being able to judge their technical skills and so on. So I would say if you have an aptitude, by far the best thing to do in college is something like, you know, science or engineering or programming or maths or something of that side.
Brilliant. Well, Mark, we've got loads of comments and congratulations coming in on the chat function, and people in the US pointing out that you're well known there and you've joined a stellar list of Irish successful entrepreneurs. And congratulations on behalf of the entire BlackRock College Union. We look forward to hearing of future success from you.
Thank you.